Morgentaler.
Dr. Brandon, what a pleasure to see you.
Oh, and you as well.
So here we are,
Yes.
another episode of the Sex Doctors, and what's on your mind?
Well, I thought it might be fun to ask people to reflect on who they are as a partner. These are questions that I often ask people in my therapy room because, it's really so easy to see what partners are doing wrong and harder for us to see sometimes ourselves. And I think it's always a good idea to reflect on occasion and see how you're doing because we could all improve, right?
What an interesting idea.
Before we start, a small disclaimer. The Sex Doctors podcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice.
Because we I'm generalizing here for other people besides myself, but I think what most people do is we're always critical of the other person in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that, well, I'm just going to speak for myself. I'm not sure that I reflect enough on how I'm doing as a partner. And so I assume that other people might have the same failing or limitation that I do, which is why it's really good.
Yeah, because life is so overstimulating often,
Right.
and we just don't take the time. We don't have the time to reflect on our personal lives that much. So I think it's a great topic.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to ask you how I'm doing as a partner, at least not for this podcast. But how would you get into that with people?
Well, when I am with someone who is very verbal about what they're unhappy with their partner. Now, that's all fair and important for me to know, but I also ask them to take a look inward. So, for example, a question that I always ask, not always, but often ask that people hate is, well, how are you as a sex partner? Would you want to have sex with yourself?
People hate that question.
They hate that question.
Why?
And you know what? Very rarely do they say yes. I mean, oftentimes they'll be like, not really would I like to have sex with myself.
They hate the question because they don't come out smelling like roses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because people will then say, well, what is it about you as a sex partner that you wouldn't enjoy? And they'll identify things that their partner has said, like, they're not an enthusiastic participant.
Right.
They never come on to their partner.
Right.
These kinds of things.
Yeah.
And they'll often have reasons why they act that way. But if we take all that away and just say, well, who are you to interact with sexually? They're left with these things that they're not necessarily proud of.
Yeah.
Often, not always.
Yeah. Of course, some of the guys, maybe a lot of them are watching this and thinking, I already have sex with myself a lot. I think I'm okay.
That's true. Never thought about it that way.
Yeah. Well, that's just a different perspective.
It is.
A different perspective. So I'm sure that you help guide people into this kind of reflection. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? Like, where do you get started with thinking about that?
I think that it's just I don't know.
Oh, I stumped the expert.
I just throw it out there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you for a minute. Would you want to have sex with yourself? Or I'll ask them, would you want to be in a romantic relationship with yourself? And that gets people too.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden people say, well, I don't know. I don't give my partner a lot of time, or I'm always so focused on the to-do list. We never really have any interaction, or I don't really ask my partner questions about how they're doing, like all kinds of stuff like that. Like, we all can improve. So everybody should be able to reflect and identify some things they could improve on today. Like, I would expect all of us, including us, to have ideas, but you're not going to change them if you're not sort of conscious of them.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to refocus. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So are there areas where you ask people to look at?
Well, so sex and relationship, I ask them who they typically are in a relationship and what makes them difficult to live with. Because we all have things that make us difficult to live with. We all do.
Present company excluded. Of course.
Of course.
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
But, people don't always realize that what they think is a positive about them may not be a positive for the other person about them.
That's right.
So it's, like people will say, well, I'm very agreeable. I'm a great partner. I'm very agreeable. Well, that's not necessarily what a partner is looking for. Is there's such a thing as being too agreeable.
For sure. Yeah.
Or
I think guys fall into that. I mean, I'm not saying that women don't, because I can imagine some examples like that too. But the guys have been taught to sort of hide their masculinity, which often gets interpreted as hide any level, any degree of assertiveness.
right,
Right?
right.
So, and the guy, now I'm just going to speak for guys for a moment. Yeah. Guys just, the old story is like, guys say it on the golf course, happy wife, happy life, right? The guys just want their partner to not be upset with them, right? Like if they can quiet whatever that is, then they're good.
Yeah.
Or they'll do something to win points so they can watch golf on Sunday, or something at night on TV, some sports thing or whatever it is that they want to watch. They just want to sort of keep things good.
Yes.
And so often they agree to things trying to just get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're too agreeable. And in fact, what happens is they're in this situation, for example, the female partner will be like I can just push him around. And
Right.
while it might be nice in the moment to get your way, ultimately women don't like to push their partner around.
They don't?
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't respect him. And if they don't respect him, they're not going to have sex with him. So this can get tricky quickly.
Okay, what you just said, I think, is really important. It may be obvious to you, but you're dealing with people who come to you because the sex is gone from the relationship. That's a common complaint, right? Yeah. So can you say more about the women don't respect the men if they're too agreeable?
Yeah.
And then won't have sex with them.
So, and they will give a guy mixed messages about this because, like I said, in the moment, she does probably want her way.
Right.
Whether it is going out for dinner or not, or what he wears or what she wears or whatever, right? So in that moment, she probably likes it. But the problem is, and she will recognize this, if she gets her way all the time, she feels like she can push him around. If she can push him around, her experience is he doesn't have balls. And if he doesn't have balls, she doesn't respect him. And if she doesn't respect him, she won't have sex with him.
So there's some guys who are listening to this. Like, I think this probably will resonate for them, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't respect me, but I'm trying my darndest, right, to make her happy.
You're right.
Right? I'm
Exactly.
agreeing to everything I can.
Exactly.
But somebody might take this and they say, well, you know what, every fifth request, I'm just going to say no. What do you think of that as a strategy?
So creative. I think that's creative. I think it's a bad strategy.
It's bad strategy.
I wouldn't agree. So, what guys will say to me, kind of to your point, they'll say, well, if I disagree, she'll just get mad at me. She won't agree. If I tell her what I think or
Right.
what we should be doing, she'll disagree and get mad.
Yeah. And what about that?
So that's a problem. And then he needs to talk to her about it. Like he needs to say, I feel like I don't have a voice in this relationship. I've let go of my voice trying to please you. I think it's backfiring. And I don't feel like you're respecting me. And when I do stand up for myself, you argue with me. And this is like making me uncomfortable. It's just stating the truth.
That's excellent. That little bit you just gave there,
Mhm.
I think can help a lot of people.
Yeah. And you don't say it like in an attack.
Yeah.
Just say it like, this is how I'm feeling. This is like, you don't say it when you're mad in the moment.
Yeah.
Say it. I tell people to have these conversations when they go out to dinner because it keeps like a lid on things. Like everybody's going to have to stay a little cool and, the waiter's going to come over soon and other people are going to be looking. So this can contain it a little bit and just say like, I don't know what the solution is, but this is what I'm feeling as a problem.
So I can see the conversation that you just proposed also going in a bad direction.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So men says, and we're just going to use men and women as we've been talking about them here, how the man's trying to be too agreeable. Man says, listen, I'm feeling this way. I feel like you're walking over me. It doesn't feel good. I feel like you're disrespecting me. And when I disagree with you about something, like you get mad at me. Right? And I could see a response to that being, what are you talking about? I get mad at you. If you disagree with me, I'm gonna argue my position.
Well, probably if she comes back like that, I would say, well, like you're doing right now. You're not really hearing me. You're just kind of pushing back.
Ooh.
Like that. That's a
Yeah.
this comment right there. But it's an example, right?
Yeah.
So I would encourage him to say in a situation like that, look, I'm not attacking you. I'm aware of a problem. I feel like you don't respect me anymore.
Yeah.
And It's
And what if the woman says, "You're right, I don't respect you"? Well, how do you handle that?
well, you go to a
That's
therapist, I think, because
that's
if there's no
that's
respect,
tough.
or yeah,
That's
that's
a
really
that's a
tough.
that's a killer.
That's a
That's a
killer
killer for the guy.
for sure.
Guys, there's a whole thing about guys, and people have written about how they actually care less about friendship. They care more about being respected and admired. That's a sort of a male role in this world. So the respecting is big.
It is big. It is big. And I would say to a guy, like, if he's trying to have conversations like this and it's not going anywhere, he's probably not getting laid. And that's a signal that something needs to be discussed. So don't just give up. Keep having this conversation or trying to have it in different ways. And if that feels too difficult, say you want to see a therapist. That's a lot of people need to kind of take that step.
Yeah, good advice. But not everybody's ready for a therapist. That feels like a huge step for people.
Yeah, it does. And a lot of people feel like they want to keep their personal lives to themselves, and they don't want to.
So what if they don't want to go to a therapist and one person says something that's terribly hurtful to the other? Like, "You're right, I don't respect you."
It's unlikely, even if she doesn't respect him, she's unlikely to say that.
I think so.
Frankly, unless she's like drunk.
Yeah.
And then what she'll do is when she's sober, she'll say it and mean it.
Yeah.
I hear these kinds of stories.
Yeah.
But she might not realize she doesn't respect him. Like it might be fair in that moment that she's saying that because it hasn't really occurred to her that that's the problem. And maybe she's not willing to look at it herself because what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I always encourage people, don't come after your partner, but bring this, whatever the problem is, as big as it could be, bring it up as casually as you can, and don't expect a solution right away. Just expect to start a dialogue. And maybe you talk about this problem over the course of months or even years, but don't expect to solve it right away. If it's a big problem, you won't solve it right away.
Right.
You might not ever solve it, but talking about it can be really healthy.
Yeah. So going back to how people can look at themselves and figure out how they can be a better partner, what do you hear from people? When you challenge people that way, what do you hear?
I hear, yeah, my expectations of my partner are really high. And generally that comes from people who have really high expectations of themselves. And that leads us into a discussion of, if you're going to treat yourself that way and whip yourself for not being perfect, that's your prerogative, but it's not really fair to put that. It's not fair to put that on your partner.
Yeah.
So that's a conversation that we often have.
Yeah. I can see people, I think there's a complaint in relationships often where somebody says that you treat strangers
Oh, yes.
better than you treat me.
Yeah.
Like there's a lack of kindness.
I hear that a lot, actually.
Do you want to say something about that?
Well, I think that is probably more common than people realize and absolutely needs to be discussed in the same ways I just spoke about. You say that to somebody. If that's where you feel like you're at with your partner, you say that to your partner. That's not okay. It has to be addressed. But you first have to let your partner know that's going on.
Yeah. I think kindness, one of the keys to relationships is kindness. And we hope that a person is kind towards most people in their lives, right, as a general statement, but it's got to be there within the relationship.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
I think that it's really easy for people to see their perspective, which is correct for them, and harder for them to get that just about every time there's an alternative way to look at it that's equally valid.
Yeah. One of the things that you and I have talked about on these podcasts is how long relationships are challenging, right? And we've talked about it in different ways about how it's hard to keep a sexual relationship going for a very long time. But I think that what happens to people is most people are not particularly self-reflective,
Yeah.
right? And we feel put upon. right? Because things don't go exactly right. And what you have in a relationship is you have two different individuals trying to make it work, but they're different people.
And different perspectives.
Different perspectives and different priorities, in some ways values. They can be like the big values can be all fine, but like alone time, what do you watch at night on TV, or do you even watch TV at night? Some people might think that that's, oh, you should be reading a book. Why are you watching TV? Right?
Well, I hear often, people going in separate rooms to watch their shows.
Right.
And then they have very little time together during the day. And then
Yeah.
that time in the evening gets.
Yeah. So there's always, early days, there may be friction, but everything gets masked by this wonderful feeling of togetherness and sex and all that stuff. But I think that over time, what happens is that those little frictions become bigger and bigger and magnified. And then people dig in their heels and they feel completely justified in what it is they're complaining about with their partner. And then they go out with their guy friends or their girlfriends or whoever, and they complain about their partners. Right? Can you believe this is what he does? And the other partner probably does the same thing back. Like they have these complaint sessions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
My friends just support this one perspective.
right.
And I'm not saying that one perspective doesn't have its validity, but there are always other ways to look at things
Right.
that are equally valid.
Yeah.
So that is problematic for sure.
Yeah. So these are some of the challenges. So as a therapist who deals with people dealing with these challenges, how do you help people sort of see the light about finding other perspectives?
So, if I have the opportunity to have the partner in the room, I would engage the partner to kind of share what their perspective is and why. That's not always an option if I'm just working with one person.
Let me throw some stuff at it.
Okay.
All right. Woman says, "Oh, my husband's work always comes first. He's so self-absorbed in his work. He comes home late. He's still thinking about it. He has emails, he has calls. He's thinking about the next day, and like there's no room for me. No time for me."
So where I would go with that is several things. One is talk to him about why, what's going on in his life that he's so driven by all of this, and talk to him about the fact that she feels neglected and unimportant. And then they discuss sort of like what's a solution for both. Like what if you had a date night or 2 date nights a week and just counted on that? Would that make it okay, or what could make it okay, or what could we try? So that's what I would do with that one.
Right. And is there any room in there to say, well, I think that one of the key things is for people to realize, I think most people are trying to do as best they can.
Yeah.
They may not do it right. It may be their solution isn't what's really all that great for their partner. But most people, I think, would say, I'm really trying here.
Right. And I love that point. That is such a bottom line point, is that for the most part, everybody is doing their best.
Right. So for that guy who's totally caught up,
Yeah.
I could see a guy easily saying, well, I take my role very seriously in what I do as a provider. It's important to me. It's important that I take care of these things. I can't just ignore them. That'd be a disaster. And I think for the partner to sort of hear that can be helpful.
Yeah.
Let's switch it around.
Okay.
Man says to woman, dealing with straight couples here, the man says, she's so involved with the kids.
Yep. I heard that one a lot.
There's nothing left for me.
Yeah.
I work, put the grocery, I pay for the groceries, I pay for the electricity in the house. What about me?
Well, often,
Especially when the kids are a little bit younger, right?
Right. So that's, again, an area where he's going to need to talk to her about this, that he feels second to the kids, and this is not a sustainable arrangement for a healthy marriage. If the kids are more important, it's even not good for the kids, because then they're on some level aware that they're more important than their parent. And that gives them a whole lot of power that they don't even want.
Oh, the power of the child.
Yeah. So then it's a pressure on the kid. Like, now I have to take care of, my mom's needs because my dad, she's relying on me emotionally, or
Yeah.
she needs me to be happy, or wherever this goes for the kid. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not good for anybody in that dynamic.
Yeah.
So we talk about that and how he can, like,
There's a theme to these two examples,
what's that?
right? Which is that people need attention in a relationship,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Tenderness. Yeah.
They need, yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to a more tricky topic,
Okay.
sex.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It all comes down to sex. We've established
the
this.
most important thing, absolutely. There's this podcast that you should really watch. It's called The Sex
That
Doctors.
sounds great.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'll have to check it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And the common theme for a lot of it is intimacy and sex. So let's talk about sex for a sec.
Okay.
Okay. How can I be a better partner at sex? How do you help people with that?
That's a great question to ask your partner. Love that question to ask your partner.
To ask your partner, how can I be a better lover?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Ooh.
And it's very fair to have things you want from your partner too. Like, it doesn't all have to be one-sided.
Right.
Conversations like this can start better if you ask first rather than tell, right? What you need different or whatever. But yeah, find out for your partner, because you know what? You may be on such the wrong track. If you try to figure it out and then fix it on your own,
Yeah.
it may not at all be what your partner's needing or whatever. So
Right.
talk about it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The communication is so difficult, and therapists often say communicate, which sounds right, but hard to do.
Man, around sex, that's so hard.
Oh my God. And what if what you want to communicate your partner doesn't want to hear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People get defensive right away.
Right. So really it is tricky.
Really, that's a tricky thing. But we are the sex doctors.
We are.
So we got to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, we should have a whole podcast on that. But yeah, so say, when people have sex conversations, I encourage them to kind of warn their partner about it so it doesn't throw them off, because these conversations can throw them off.
Right.
And say, like, I'd love to talk to you about our sex life. I'd love to talk to you about maybe what I can be doing different that you would enjoy, and what else however else we can make our sex life better. When is a good time for you to talk about this? Like, when should we when should we do this, and engage the partner in, like, the timing and stuff, so that they don't feel like the floor just got pulled out from under them.
Right. Dr. Brandon, I have one for you.
Okay.
All right. So I think that often couples, especially if they've been together for a while, that one partner, and often both, knows what they could do better for the other partner sexually, and they just won't do it. Right?
Right.
And that may just be have sex more often, or something as straightforward as that, right? Or certain kinds of whatever it is, oral sex or something. How do you deal with that?
So the person that's being hurt has got to put that to words, but not in an angry way. So you can't wait till you can't stand it anymore and you blow up. You got to say, like, I've been feeling this for a while. I let it go, kind of hoping it would change. It's not changing. I really need to talk to you about it. This is just too difficult for me. We need to kind of come up with some solutions to it.
When you say it, it sounds so easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. Right. I know. I know.
I mean, you're very good at that.
But what I can't stress enough is expect to have more than one conversation if it's a challenging topic, and don't expect to have a solution right away, and be gentle. So just take the pressure off yourself and your partner to figure it out. All couples have challenges, and they may have the same challenges throughout the entire course of their marriage. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't talk about it, but it does mean that you want to kind of be a little relaxed about it. Like, take a deep breath, remind yourself that you're on the same team as your partner, and you got to, sort of like ease into it and think about it, and then talk again, and then think about it. Like, that when we say communicate as therapists, that's what we mean.
Yeah.
We don't mean just once, just say, you asshole, like, this is what you're doing, and consider that communication.
Yep. Okay. So most common scenario, one partner wants more sex than the other. Okay. Very common.
Yeah.
How would you say that person could communicate to a partner? Could go in either direction, right? That they're not having very much sex, and it's bugging me.
So, what is that? That's intimacy. So my first reaction would be, if it feels like it suits that person, say to their partner, I miss you. I want to connect. That's part of our relationship, and it's a really important part to me. So, I want to be closer to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and so that's one
Good.
very solid thing
Yeah,
to say. I
very
want to be
good.
closer, because that's what it is.
Yeah, that's good.
Another solid approach is a book I love. It's called
Can I stop here for a second?
Yeah.
So guys that are listening, right? That may not be exactly where your brain goes. I want to be closer. Like, what you really want is you want more sex. But
This doesn't sound good, but okay.
there's an approach that you can use, because
Yeah.
actually more sex makes guys often feel closer.
Absolutely, it does.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
And that is, for so many people, their love language. It really is.
Yeah. Because when you said it, what I heard is, I could see women saying that very easily, right? A woman can say, I miss you, I'd like to have more sex.
Right.
Right? That's the situation where the woman wants sex more often than is happening with the guy.
Yeah.
But for the guy to say it to the woman, I don't think it's an automatic for them to say, I miss you, I want to be closer with you. But it's part of what actually is going on, what they're experiencing right in front of their face, like behind their eyeballs, is, I want more sex.
Right.
Right? But that's a nice way to approach it.
Right. I want to be closer. I feel neglected. I feel like you don't care about me. I'm feeling really lonely.
Ooh.
All are
Ooh,
true.
that's power. I think that the lonely resident, like, I get that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if these words are still too difficult, there's that great book, The 5 Love Languages, and that author talks in that book about sex being some people's love language, and for some people, that's how they feel love. So that book is a great resource for people.
Okay.
If they feel like they can't speak it,
Yeah.
then share it with their partner. Always, if they can, go into this conversation with, this is, where I am, but what do you need from me? Like, because we all can do better. So
Right.
that guy who's not having enough sex could also probably improve in another way. So try to make it fair and talk to the partner about that too, so they don't feel like they're just being attacked.
Okay. How about, Dr. Brandon, if there's like something specific sexual that the person likes and the partner just isn't doing it, and partner knows that the first partner really likes it, but they're not going there for whatever reason.
So we're talking like oral sex.
Let's say oral sex. Why not?
Because I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk about it, but sex is so tricky, in that for some people that feels like intrusive or uncomfortable, and that's a legit response too. So wanting it is legit. Also, that reaction is legit. So talking about, first of all, is there a way to make that more comfortable for the person that's saying no? Maybe there is. Maybe there's a way to make that even fun for that person, but they just have to talk it through. So, that's
So I guess, I'm wondering how somebody even brings it up, because I can easily imagine it being accusatory and not that collaborative. So we're looking here for some tips from you, right? Maybe it's a guy who likes blowjobs or whatever. And he says, you never do it. You never do it. When we first got together, you do it. Now you don't do it. What the heck?
So I would say, of course, going after anybody with that kind of attitude will not get you what you are looking for.
Right.
So you've just screwed yourself.
Right.
So that's point one. So
I'm saying it that way so that people can hear it, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think the most effective way to approach a conversation like that would be to recognize that this is one piece of a complex sex life, and approach it from the perspective of the whole. So say, that didn't sound right, did it? Approach it from...
No, it's okay.
Okay. Approach it from the perspective of the greater picture, and this is one piece of the puzzle. So let's talk about our sex life. Let's talk about how we can make it better. Think about what you want different. I'll think about what I want to, experiment with, and let's have a discussion. So that becomes a piece of the puzzle, not like what we're going to have this whole conversation about this one.
Oh, you're good. You're very good.
But it actually, that is...
That was so much better than how I said it.
Exactly. Well, it's more effective too, because, I mean, everybody deserves to be more satisfied in whatever way.
Right.
So opening the door for a back and forth and recognizing that there's probably other pieces here that need to be addressed
Yeah.
is a really great way to do it.
Yeah.
And, don't try to solve it all right away. If it really, the bottom line is oral sex for somebody, start this kind of conversation, but don't expect in that one conversation it's now going to be solved.
Right.
You've got to have some patience with this stuff.
Right. So, our theme today
Yes.
is how can people figure out how they can be a better partner?
Right.
So, what would you say in your
Which
experience?
is kind of what we haven't been doing. We've actually been talking about how to tell your partner that you haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of
No, that's
in the
okay.
wrong direction.
No, I think it's okay because sex is difficult, and
Yeah. Okay.
and what it underscores though is that people often do know. This is how we got there.
Yeah.
People often do know they could do better for their partner.
Yeah.
Even with sex, and sometimes they don't,
Mm-hmm.
and they have all sorts of reasons and justifications why they don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And maybe it's I don't like doing that, or maybe I'm not that attracted to him or her anymore.
Yeah.
Right. It could be a whole lot of
For sure.
things. But I would think that again, with our intimacy focus here,
Yes.
that one way that many partners can be better is actually by being more giving sexually.
Yes. And you know what? Giving, this is often stated in our culture, but it's really true that when we give, our partner will give more,
Yeah.
right? So the more you give, the more you're going to get.
Yeah.
And there truly is pleasure in giving.
Yeah.
Like we get purpose, we find meaning from giving, from caring for others.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important bottom line,
Yeah.
right?
I was just, going back to the kindness thing.
Uh-huh.
Everybody loves a compliment here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't really about intimate relationships so much, but I remember that when I was a resident in training at rotating through Boston Children's Hospital, there was a surgeon that I was, working with, and there was a kid that came in. Kid had a problem. It was a hernia, and anyway, things didn't go. I had to scrub out of the surgery case. I saw him in the office. I came back to surgery. It was a long case, and I was unsuccessful in doing what I needed to do, and which was to try and reduce the hernia, make it smaller and go away because it was causing discomfort. And the surgeon said to me, "Well, how did you approach the kid?" And I just said, "Well, I just did what I just did what I did." He says, "Did you compliment him?" He says the best way you can put a kid at ease is and there's always, and what he said is there's always something you can compliment them about. I like your shoes. I like your hair. I like the bow. I like whatever it is.
That's so sweet.
And I've always remembered that.
Yeah.
And just a little, and really what is a compliment? It's a little kindness.
Yeah.
It goes a long way.
That's very sweet. As I've been working in this field and becoming more and more aware of the advancing technology and how sex tech can offer so much, I think all of this is that much more important than it even used to be.
Mm-hmm.
That our focus on our own humanity and how much we can give is super important in relationships because tech is right behind us, ready to meet any need.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right.
emotional, sexual.
Yeah.
It's right there.
I love that.
It's true.
Yeah. I don't think we could end on a better note than that.
Okay.
Our humanity and the importance of it and sharing that with the people that we love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's a better purpose in life than to love well, right? To love your partner well,
Yeah.
love your family well.
You could almost say that loving well is living well.
Yes, you could.
Dr. Brandon, that was a great little episode.
Aw.
And your wisdom and your thoughtfulness, you sharing this with people who listen in is so valuable.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I think we'll just wrap it up there, and we bid you adieu. And we hope to see you again on the next episode of The Sex Doc.
Yeah, and please subscribe.
Yeah, because you don't want to miss any episodes.
Right.
Bye-bye.